November 4th, 1979. Militant Iranian students stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, seizing 63 Americans plus 3 diplomats from the Iranian Foreign Ministry. President Carter had allowed the deposed Shah into America for cancer treatment, triggering revolutionary rage. By April 1980, 13 hostages were released, leaving 53 still captive. Diplomatic options exhausted, Carter authorized Operation Eagle Claw. The plan demanded precision from all 4 military branches. 8 Navy RH-53D Sea Stallion helicopters would launch from USS Nimitz, flying 600 miles to Desert 1, a salt flat 200 miles southeast of Tehran. C-130 transports carrying Delta Force and fuel would meet them there. After refueling, helicopters would continue to Desert 2, closer to the capital. CIA teams would provide trucks for the final assault on the embassy, with extraction planned at Amjadiya Stadium. Everything fell apart during the helicopter flight. A massive Haboob dust storm scattered the formation, reducing visibility to 0. Fine sand infiltrated engines and hydraulic systems. One helicopter set down with blade warnings. Another turned back with hydraulic failures. 6 helicopters reached Desert 1, the bare minimum needed. Then a third helicopter developed hydraulic problems at the rendezvous point. 5 operational birds, 1 below minimum. Colonel Charlie Beckwith ordered the abort. During withdrawal, disaster struck. Rotor wash kicked up blinding dust. One helicopter pilot became disoriented and drifted forward, colliding with a parked C-130 tanker. Both aircraft exploded instantly. 8 servicemen died, 5 airmen, and 3 Marines. Surviving forces evacuated in chaos, abandoning intact helicopters loaded with classified equipment. 0 hostages rescued. Iranian forces captured the abandoned helicopters and documents, broadcasting the failure worldwide. The mission exposed critical gaps in joint operations coordination, compatible communications, and intelligence capabilities. Carter's presidency never recovered. The failure led directly to creating U.S. Special Operations Command in 1987, fundamentally restructuring how America conducts special operations. SEAL Team 6 and the 161st Special Operations Aviation Regiment emerged from Eagle Claw's lessons. Joint training became mandatory. Equipment standardized. The 8 men who died forced institutional changes that transformed American military capability. Somalia started as humanitarian intervention in 1992, stopping mass starvation. When warlord Mohammed Farah Aidid's militias attacked UN peacekeepers, the mission shifted. Task Force Ranger formed under Operation Gothic Serpent with one objective: capture Aidid and his lieutenants. October 3, 1993. Approximately 160 troops deployed in 19 aircraft and 12 vehicles for what should have been a quick snatch-and-grab targeting 2 of Aidid's key lieutenants in Mogadishu. The plan called for rapid extraction. Instead, the operation devolved into 18 hours of brutal urban combat. At 4:20 p.m., Black Hawk Super 61 took an RPG-7 hit and crashed. Both pilots, CW-3 Cliff Wolcott and CW-3 Donovan Briley, died instantly. 2 special operations snipers survived the crash and mounted desperate defense while waiting for extraction. Staff Sergeant Daniel Bush was mortally wounded defending the site. Miscommunication between the ground convoy and assault team delayed rescue operations. American forces became trapped under heavy fire from militia fighters who'd trained specifically to target helicopter tail rotors. Around 4:40 p.m., Super 64 went down after taking RPG fire. Master Sergeant Gary Gordon and Sergeant First Class Randy Schuchart, 2 Delta Force snipers, voluntarily inserted themselves into the second crash site, knowing extraction was unlikely. The battle revealed American vulnerability in urban environments against determined insurgents operating within civilian populations. 18 U.S. personnel died, primarily from Delta Force and Army Rangers. 73 were wounded. Somali militia suffered 500 to 1,000 casualties. Tactically, the mission succeeded. The target was captured and enemy forces took massive losses. But images of dead American soldiers dragged through Mogadishu's streets shocked the nation. The Pyrrhic victory ended public support for the Somalia intervention. By October 14th, Aidid released captured pilot Michael Durant, effectively ending the manhunt. Gordon and Schuchart received posthumous medals of honor for their last stand at the second crash site. Their decision to insert into a hopeless situation embodied the refusal to abandon fallen comrades, even when survival became impossible. 4 Navy SEALs inserted into the mountains near Asadabad, Kunar Province, hunting Ahmad Shah, a Taliban commander believed to operate with 10 to 20 fighters near the Pakistani border. Lieutenant Michael Murphy led the reconnaissance team with petty officers Matthew Axelson, Danny Dietz, and Marcus Luttrell. Shaw was linked to al-Qaeda and considered a high-value target. After sunrise on June 28, 2005, local goat herders stumbled into the hidden SEAL position. The team faced an impossible choice: execute unarmed civilians or release them and compromise the mission. They chose to follow rules of engagement and let the herders go. Almost immediately, an estimated 200-plus Taliban fighters attacked from multiple directions. Intelligence had vastly underestimated enemy strength in the area. Outgunned and outnumbered on steep mountain terrain, the SEALs fought a running battle down the mountainside while suffering multiple casualties. Lieutenant Murphy, already wounded, deliberately exposed himself to enemy fire to establish satellite communications and call for backup. He was killed making that call. Murphy received a posthumous Medal of Honor for knowingly sacrificing himself to save his team. His distress call triggered an emergency response. A CH-47 Chinook, carrying 8 members of the 161st Special Operations Aviation Regiment and 8 Navy SEALs, rushed toward the battle. As the helicopter approached the landing zone, Taliban fighters fired an RPG that struck the aircraft directly. The Chinook exploded mid-air and crashed, killing all 16 personnel instantly. 19 Americans died that day, 11 Navy SEALs and 8 Army Night Stalkers. Only Marcus Luttrell survived, found by Afghan villagers who sheltered him under Pashtunwali Protection Code. The SEALs inflicted an estimated 35 enemy casualties during their last stand. Ahmad Shah eventually escaped to Pakistan. Operation Red Wings 2 continued for weeks with additional ground operations, but ultimately dispersed rather than destroyed Shah's forces. The battle exposed the dangers of small reconnaissance teams operating in terrain where enemy forces could mass quickly with overwhelming numbers. May 17, 1987. The guided missile frigate USS Stark patrolled the Persian Gulf during the Iran-Iraq War, operating in international waters approximately 3 kilometers outside Iraq's declared war zone. Around 10 p.m. local time, an Iraqi Dassault Mirage F-1EQ fighter jet approached the vessel. The ship's radars tracked the aircraft. Captain Glenn Brindle ordered warning and identification challenges. The pilot never responded. At 35 kilometers range, the Iraqi pilot fired 2 aerospatial AIM-39 Exocet anti-ship missiles. The Stark's radar systems failed to detect the incoming missiles, traveling just 3 meters above water. The crew realized too late they were under attack. Both Exocets used active radar homing, targeting the ship's superstructure. The first missile penetrated the hull directly below the bridge, but failed to detonate. Its unspent rocket fuel ignited a raging fire. The second missile struck nearly the same location and detonated, tearing a 3-meter by 4.6-meter hole in the hull. Combined explosions and resulting fire burned for nearly 24 hours. 37 U.S. Navy personnel were killed or died from injuries. 21 were wounded. Captain Brindle ordered flooding of the starboard side to keep the damaged port side hole above waterline, preventing the ship from sinking. Supported by destroyers USS Waddell and USS Conyngham, the Stark barely reached Manama, Bahrain the next day. USS Acadia provided temporary repairs before the ship returned to the U.S. for $142 million in extensive repairs. Iraq apologized immediately. Saddam Hussein claimed the pilot mistook the American frigate for an Iranian tanker. The incident highlighted risks of naval operations in contested waters during proxy wars. It became the worst peacetime naval disaster in American history at that time, surpassed only by the USS Iowa gun turret explosion in 1989. The attack demonstrated the vulnerability of modern warships to anti-ship missiles and exposed gaps in defensive systems designed to detect low-altitude threats. Beginning in early 1960, the CIA developed plans to overthrow Fidel Castro using approximately 1,500 Cuban exiles opposed to the communist regime. This paramilitary force, designated Brigade 2506, trained in Guatemala and Florida. The strategy assumed a surprise beach invasion would spark popular uprising against Castro. April 17, 1961. The invasion commenced at Playa Girón in the Bay of Pigs on Cuba's southwestern coast. The critical element of tactical surprise was lost immediately. Cuban revolutionary forces under José Ramón Fernández were prepared and waiting. Intelligence estimated 200 to 250 enemy fighters. Castro mobilized thousands. The original CIA plan included air support to neutralize Castro's air force and provide close cover during the beach assault. President John F. Kennedy, concerned about American involvement appearing too overt, canceled the airstrikes. This decision proved catastrophic. Brigade 2506 landed with limited equipment, ammunition, and no resupply capability once beach operations stalled. After 3 days of intense fighting, Brigade 2506 was overwhelmed by superior Cuban forces. The brigade retreated into the Zapata Peninsula swamps as ammunition ran out. U.S. ships attempted rescue operations but could only extract 26 men under fire. Approximately 1,189 brigade members were captured. 114 Brigade 2,506 members were killed. The captured exiles languished in Cuban prisons for 22 months before the Kennedy administration negotiated their release with ransom payments exceeding $50 million in food, medicine, and supplies. The Bay of Pigs became a massive embarrassment for Kennedy, demonstrating perceived U.S. weakness against communism. The failed invasion intensified Cold War tensions and directly contributed to the Cuban Missile Crisis just 18 months later. Castro solidified his grip on Cuba, and the operation validated Soviet support for the revolution. Kennedy absorbed full responsibility for the disaster, but the damage to American credibility lasted years. The operation revealed dangers of covert action without adequate planning, intelligence, or commitment to see missions through regardless of political optics. During Operation Anaconda in early March 2002, reconnaissance teams inserted into strategic mountain locations in the Shah-e-Khat Valley to establish observation posts directing air power against regrouping Taliban and al-Qaeda forces. A 4-man SEAL team reconnaissance element, including Petty Officer First Class Neil Roberts, was tasked with inserting atop Takur Gar Mountain via MH-47E Chinook helicopter. Mechanical problems with one helicopter delayed the insertion, causing the team to arrive after first light instead of pre-dawn darkness, a critical tactical disadvantage. As Chinook Razor 03 attempted landing on the mountain ridge, it came under intense automatic weapons fire and RPG attack from well-entrenched al-Qaeda positions. The helicopter lurched from incoming fire. Petty Officer Roberts fell approximately 3 meters into the snow as the aircraft lifted off to evade fire. Roberts activated his infrared strobe light to mark his position. A second Chinook attempted rescue but was forced to abandon the attempt due to heavy fire. During a third landing attempt by Razor 02, carrying 10 Rangers and Technical Sergeant Kerry Miller, the helicopter was struck by automatic weapons and RPGs while still 20 feet in the air. The Chinook hit the ground hard, killing the right door gunner and 3 Army Rangers immediately. Whether Roberts was killed immediately when he fell or captured and executed later remains unclear. Surveillance footage showed al-Qaeda fighters moving around a body position where Roberts' infrared strobe was active, suggesting possible capture before execution. The fighting lasted 17 hours as Rangers fought their way up the snow-covered mountain in knee-deep snow to assault al-Qaeda defensive positions. 7 U.S. service members were killed, including Roberts and 3 Rangers from the first assault wave. 12 were wounded. Rangers and CSR personnel successfully seized the mountaintop and established control of Roberts Ridge. The battle highlighted dangers of daylight insertions into prepared defensive positions and tactical vulnerability of mountain warfare, where enemy forces hold high ground with clear fields of fire. Launched in early March 2002, Operation Anaconda represented the largest combat operation in Afghanistan to that point. The operation aimed to encircle and destroy Taliban and al-Qaeda forces, regrouping in the Shah-e-Khat Valley and Arma Mountains, approximately 60 miles south of Gardez in Paktia province. Intelligence suggested 300 to 1,000 enemy fighters occupied the valley. Between March 2nd and 18th, approximately 1,700 U.S. airlifted troops from 10th Mountain Division and 101st Airborne Division, plus 1,000 pro-government Afghan militia, faced enemy forces exceeding initial estimates. Taliban and al-Qaeda had prepared extensive defensive networks in caves and ridge positions throughout mountainous terrain, utilizing Soviet-era fortifications. On March 2nd, U.S. forces helicopters into southern and northern valley approaches to establish blocking positions, while Afghan forces conducted sweep operations. Within minutes of landing, American soldiers started getting barrages of RPG rounds from al-Qaeda, positions dug into ridgelines above. Enemy superior positioning and firepower created close-quarters attritional battle, fought in deep snow and harsh terrain. Throughout the operation, U.S. troops came under sustained heavy mortar, RPG, and small arms fire from entrenched enemy positions. Mountainous terrain prevented rapid assault tactics. U.S. forces had to fight systematically, using ground and air firepower to suppress enemy positions and clear defensive bunkers. Casualties mounted as the operation evolved into an 18-hour-per-day grind of firefights and forced movement. U.S. forces sustained significant casualties, especially during the Takur Ghar battle on March 4th, while inflicting an estimated 200 to 400 plus enemy casualties. By March 10th, military estimates suggested 100 to 200 al-Qaeda fighters remained operational, indicating the organization's ability to rotate and reinforce despite American firepower. The U.S. eventually secured the valley and forced al-Qaeda forces to disperse into Pakistan and remote mountain regions. However, the operation did not achieve complete destruction of terrorist forces hoped for at the planning stage. Operation Anaconda demonstrated that despite overwhelming U.S. technological and firepower advantages, fighting determined enemy forces in their preferred mountainous terrain remained costly and imperfect. From September 17th to 27th, 1944, Operation Market Garden represented the largest airborne operation in history, with 41,000 plus Allied jumpers deployed into the Netherlands. Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery convinced Supreme Allied Commander Dwight Eisenhower to approve this two-part operation: Market, airborne assault to seize 9 bridges, and Garden, British ground forces advancing up those corridors. The objective was bypassing the Siegfried Line and establishing a staging area to cross the Rhine into Germany. A critical planning constraint was insufficient transport aircraft to deliver all airborne troops in a single lift. This necessitated conducting operations over multiple days, with only approximately 60% of total infantry delivered on D-Day. Weather forecasts predicted only 2 good days, but extended operations risked deteriorating conditions. Staggered delivery destroyed the element of surprise and gave German forces time to organize counterattacks. Intelligence indicated the operational area was lightly defended. In reality, 2 SS Panzer divisions were refitting in the Arnhem area and capable of effective combat operations. Planners dismissed warnings about German armor, stating the panzers could not fight effectively. This intelligence failure proved catastrophic, as German armor quickly engaged airborne troops who arrived with limited anti-tank resources. Due to concerns about German anti-aircraft defenses, the British 1st Airborne Division was dropped 8 miles west of Arnhem, far from the actual bridge objective. For lightly armed paratroopers, this distance proved fatal. The 1st Parachute Brigade had to fight overland to reach Arnhem through German defensive positions. Radio problems hindered communications, isolating units and preventing coordination of relief efforts. The British 1st Airborne Division fought desperately to hold the Arnhem Bridge area, but was unable to secure the bridge itself. German forces isolated the paratroopers near Oosterbeek. British ground forces could not fight through to relieve them. After 9 days, surviving British paratroopers were evacuated across the Rhine, but approximately 6,000 plus British and Polish troops were killed or captured. The operation resulted in over 16,000 Allied casualties, including 1,400 killed. The objective of establishing a Rhine crossing point into Germany was not achieved. Historians concluded Market Garden was a bad plan from the start, highlighting how optimistic planning, intelligence failures, and tactical inflexibility combined to produce one of the war's costly airborne failures. Fought from September 19th to December 16th, 1944, the Battle of Hurtgen Forest lasted 88 days, making it the longest battle on German soil during World War II, and the second longest single battle the U.S. Army ever fought. American forces fought through a 140 square kilometer forest consisting of dense woods, deep ravines, and high ridges approximately 5 kilometers east of the Belgian-German border. The initial U.S. objective was pinning down German forces to prevent them from reinforcing lines farther north during the Battle of Aachen. U.S. commanders intended to seize the village of Schmidt and clear Monschau while advancing to the Ruhr River. However, well-organized German resistance under General Feldmarschall Walter Model transformed these limited objectives into grinding attritional nightmare, consuming enormous casualties. Germans held prepared defensive positions embedded throughout the forest, taking advantage of west wall fortifications consisting of pillboxes, anti-tank obstacles, minefields, and interlocking fields of fire. Dense forest prevented effective American armor deployment and provided excellent defensive cover for German troops. Model's competent command kept pace with American advances and inflicted maximum casualties while maintaining defensive integrity. Soldiers described the battle as fighting through a meat grinder. Cold winter weather, knee-deep mud, dense forest preventing visibility beyond 20 to 30 meters, and constantly reinforced German defensive lines meant American soldiers faced endless succession of small unit firefights and costly frontal assaults. The forest became a hellscape of continuous casualties, trench foot, and demoralized troops pushed beyond exhaustion. The U.S. First Army suffered at least 33,000 killed and wounded, with upper estimates reaching 55,000 casualties. German casualties were approximately 28,000. Despite enormous American casualties, the operation failed to achieve its strategic objective. The U.S. never successfully crossed the Ruhr River or wrested control of dams from German forces. Historians described the Battle of Hurtgen Forest as an Allied defeat of the first magnitude, with specific credit given to Model's effective defensive command. The battle represented one of the costliest and least productive operations of the European campaign, consuming resources and personnel that might have achieved more strategic value elsewhere. Veterans and historians consistently cite it as among the worst combat experiences of the entire war. In September 1983, internal turmoil within Grenada's communist government culminated in assassination of Prime Minister Maurice Bishop by a rival faction. The Reagan administration, concerned about Grenada's alignment with Cuba and the Soviet Union, decided to intervene militarily under the stated justification of protecting approximately 600 American medical students on the island. Operation Urgent Fury was approved rapidly with minimal planning time. Grenada fell under U.S. Atlantic Command's area, creating a command structure where Theater Commander Admiral MacDonald tasked Vice Admiral Joseph Metcalf III as operational commander. The two naval officers lacked detailed knowledge of ground combat operations. Poor communications at all levels marred the operation throughout, with Metcalf and commanders ashore maintaining poor to non-existent radio communications. The CIA disclosed it had no agents on Grenada and zero intelligence on enemy dispositions. SEAL Team 6 was tasked with night beach reconnaissance, using two C-130 transport aircraft, dropping two teams. One C-130 pilot, inexperienced in low-level night insertions, missed the drop zone entirely. 4 SEALs were swept away by heavy seas in a rain squall and drowned. Their bodies were never recovered. SEAL Team 6 commandos attempting to extract Grenada's Governor General Sir Paul Schoon found their satellite communications equipment had remained aboard their insertion helicopter. As Grenadian and Cuban troops began surrounding the mansion where SEALs established defensive positions, their only operational radio ran out of battery power. Forced to improvise, they used the mansion's civilian telephone line to call headquarters and direct AC-130 gunship fire support onto approaching enemy forces. SEAL Team 6, commandos attacking the radio station, ran into severe resistance and communication problems. The SEALs attempted to complete their mission while isolated, demonstrating tactical capability despite reconnaissance mission failure and command and control problems. Despite significant failures, U.S. forces ultimately secured Grenada and successfully evacuated American citizens, 599 total, with none killed or injured. However, Operation Urgent Fury revealed critical deficiencies in special operations coordination, inter-service command structure, and pre-operation intelligence. These lessons led to creation and structuring of U.S. Special Operations Command in 1987, fundamentally reorganizing how the U.S. conducts special operations. On March 23, 1994, at Pope Air Force Base in North Carolina, the worst peacetime aviation disaster on U.S. soil occurred, when an F-16D Fighting Falcon, conducting a simulated flameout approach, collided mid-air with a C-13-0E Hercules transport aircraft, also on final approach. Both pilots, Captains Joseph Giacchino and Scott Salmon, were in the two-seat F-16D variant. This mid-air collision represents the largest number of ground fatalities caused by an accidental aircraft crash on U.S. soil. The damaged F-16D disintegrated as it continued down the runway, creating a massive fireball traveling at hundreds of miles per hour. The disintegrated fighter jet and its fuel exploded directly onto the green ramp. The large parking area where approximately 500 paratroopers from the 82nd Airborne Division were staged and preparing for routine airborne training jumps. 24 paratroopers were killed instantly, and over 100 sustained critical injuries, representing the 82nd Airborne Division's largest one-day loss of life since World War II. Paratroopers experienced severe burns from jet fuel fireball, blast injuries from explosion, and traumatic injuries from flaming debris. Survivor Jason Savell, then an 18-year-old private first class, reported being thrown through the air, landing face down with his hair burning and falling out, suffering loss of his lower left leg. Amid chaos of the fireball and explosions, fellow soldiers, civilians, and emergency personnel immediately sprang into action to render first aid and rescue the injured. Paratroopers exhibited classic reaction, disregarding their own safety to help or save their fellow paratroopers. Ambulances and civilian vehicles evacuated the critically injured to Womack Army Medical Center and nearby civilian hospitals. The disaster left permanent scars, both physical and psychological, on surviving paratroopers and the entire 82nd Airborne Division. Many survivors, including then Captain Jim Mingus, who later became the 50th Commanding General of the division, suffered severe, life-altering injuries. The weight of those 24 lost lives continues to be remembered and honored annually. Subsequent investigation determined both aircraft pilots failed to maintain proper separation procedures during approach phase. The F-16 pilot experienced spatial disorientation, and traffic separation breakdowns between military and civilian radar controllers contributed to the accident. The disaster remained fixed in military institutional memory as a reminder of how routine training operations can result in catastrophic outcomes when fundamental safety procedures fail. During the 1983 period, SEAL teams underwent significant organizational restructuring. The parent organization, Underwater Demolition Teams, was being folded into the newly expanded SEAL Force structure. SEAL Team 6, the elite counterterrorism unit, was particularly active during this time. SEAL Team 6 was heavily involved in Operation Urgent Fury in Grenada, where the team suffered the loss of 4 SEALs to drowning during beach reconnaissance insertion. Communication failures plagued the Governor General extraction mission as well. These operational setbacks exposed serious gaps in training oversight, planning, and equipment reliability. Training exercises during this period revealed vulnerabilities in specialized insertion techniques. Heavy surf conditions, poor visibility, and faulty intelligence on tide and water conditions created dangerous scenarios during approach training. Boats capsized and operators were thrown into heavy surf while approaching target beaches. Multiple SEALs drowned or were injured, raising questions about training oversight and planning adequacy. The failures experienced by SEAL teams during Operation Urgent Fury, combined with earlier failures during Operation Eagle Claw in 1980, prompted military leadership to consolidate special operations under Joint Special Operations Command. The institutional recognition that elite units required better coordination, communication systems, and unified command structure led to eventual establishment of U.S. Special Operations Command in 1987. These incidents helped drive early reforms in SEAL Team 6 doctrine and leadership structure, emphasizing the importance of realistic training that accounted for environmental conditions, proper equipment testing, and thorough mission planning that didn't sacrifice operator safety for training realism.